Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to season 2 of the Beyond Clinical podcast. I'm your host, Alexis Williams, co-founder of Business Skills for Health Professionals. In this podcast, I'll be interviewing health professionals from diverse backgrounds who've moved into unconventional roles beyond clinical. We'll be hearing their stories and tips and hope that this inspires you to pursue unique career paths. So this is episode 21, and I'd like to introduce my guest, Julie Bednarski-Malik. Julie, do you want to say hello to the audience?
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for having me here today.
Awesome. I'm so excited to talk to you, but I want to just share a little bit about your background. So Julie is a dynamic and energetic entrepreneur with almost 10 years of experience in the food and nutrition industry. She's always had a passion for food and wellness and believes that health and happiness all start in the kitchen. Her education background includes Bachelor of Applied Science at the University of Guelph in nutrition, same as myself, Masters of Health Science and Nutrition Communications at Ryerson, and then she went on to complete her dietetic internship to become a registered dietitian with the College of Dietitians in Ontario. In 2012, she followed her passion for culinary arts and attended the chef's training program, culinary program in New York City at the Natural Gourmet Institute. Following her culinary training, Julie went on to work in various restaurants throughout North America to refine and develop her culinary skills. In 2014, she started Healthy Crunch as a way to satisfy her craving for super crunchy kale chips that were big in size and big in flavor. She started recipe development in her home kitchen, and within 1 year, she'd expanded to her own commercial snack food manufacturing facility. Healthy Crunch's mission is to innovate everyday foods, making them better for you while being super delicious. With Julie's ambition for success, Healthy Crunch grew to have over 25,000 points of distribution within Canada within the first 2 years of business. Healthy Crunch now distributes their products throughout the world, including Canada, USA, Europe, and the Middle East. Since the start of her business, Julie continues to expand Healthy Crunch's product lines to include coconut chips, trail mix, granola bars, Rice Krispie Squares, which I got to try. They are delicious. Chia jam, seed butter, instant lattes, kale chips, and dark chocolate fruit bites. Julie is proud to be a woman entrepreneur and a certified women-owned business. Awesome. So yeah, I'm so excited to have you.
Thanks. That was a lot. Yeah, just sort of listening to it, but yeah, many years of experience.
Yeah, well, it's well deserved. Lots of exciting things that you've been doing. So I like to start out with like a fun, unrelated question to kick things off. So my first question is, do you enjoy podcasts? And if so, what's your favorite podcast at the moment?
Oh, you know what? I am so passionate about podcasts. Actually, one of my friends and I are actually thinking of starting a podcast ourselves, which we're going to be
Ooh.
starting in the next couple months too, as well. Because I find it is such a great way to connect to people too as well. So my list of podcasts that we've been sort of listening to figure out kind of what how we're going to have our own podcast. But no, truly love listening to a podcast, especially because it makes time. Let's say if you're driving somewhere, if you're going on a walk, you kind of get inspired by other let's say entrepreneurs or other women in business too as well. So but yeah, there's lots to discuss too as well.
Yeah. Do you have any favorites?
Oh, you know what? Right now, I'm listening to how this was built, and so it's kind of talks to
Ah,
different about different sort of businesses. I'm always fascinated about learning about like how other entrepreneurs kind of how they started and how they got to where they are. So yeah, definitely Sarah Blakely, any founder that I could listen to, especially female entrepreneurs, because I feel like female entrepreneurs have a little bit more challenging sort of journey than traditional entrepreneurs. So then yeah, so happy to kind of learn more from other females out there.
yeah, I love that one. How I Built This with Guy
Yeah,
Raz, right? Was that the one? Yeah. Yeah, that's actually one of my favorites too. I love hearing like the origin stories of all the different companies. So maybe you'll be on there one day. That would be cool.
maybe. Yeah, exactly.
I'd love to hear your health professional origin story and kind of a little bit more about your career journey.
Perfect. I love talking about this because, I love sharing my journey and how I started in dietetics and kind of how I kind of came to where I am today. Because often you don't find dietitians and kind of being like CEOs of companies or founders of food companies. So my background is I loved nutrition. I love culinary food. I remember this goes back to like even when I was 5 years old, I was always playing in the kitchen trying to make different recipes, but I was always truly passionate about food and nutrition. I wanted to understand like how food sort of make me fuel me at the time. I was actually training for triathlons back in like 2000s, like 1995. I was doing marathon running, and I was so fascinated about how food and nutrition could impact my performance as an athlete. And so once I was doing triathlon, I decided I was going to go to the University of Guelph and study nutrition to learn more about kind of everything about nutrition. And so I went to the University of Guelph, and I always knew that I didn't want to work in a and work in a hospital. I always knew that I wanted to kind of do something different. And so I went to the University of Guelph, did my studies, but I was still sort of dabbling in like different entrepreneurial stuff. So I was, had a couple of businesses on the side. I was doing catering because I was always so fascinated about
Mm.
culinary arts. And so my journey, I did 5 years at University of Guelph for my undergrad. And then when I was done, I was very fortunate actually to get a call from someone at the University of Guelph had put my name forward for an internship to work at Unilever. And it's
Oh.
funny because I never really thought, I was like, oh, Unilever, such a big company. Like who would ever, I would never be able to sort of get an internship spot over there. But one of my professors at University of Guelph put my name forth. And I actually got an internship at Unilever. And that's kind of how I started in the corporate world in food. And so I
Mm.
was there for over a year, about a year and a half, and I was working in formula and label compliance. So at the time, I knew nothing about regulatory,
Mm.
but it was kind of my first like sort of jump into the food space, into sort of the corporate food world. And I learned everything about regulatory, food claims, packaging. And if I look back, I was like, wow, that was so helpful for what I learned at Unilever, because today in my role as CEO and founder of Healthy Crunch, I'm dealing with a lot of regulatory stuff, a lot of packaging issues, health claims, all that. And so I worked at Unilever for a year and a half. And mind you, in the meantime, I was trying to get an internship spot to do my internship placement. But as everyone's familiar, there's so many dietetic interns that want to get an
Mm-hmm.
internship, but there's not enough spots. And so I tried for about 3 years to try to get a placement. I wasn't unfortunately lucky to get a placement. So I decided then I was going to do my master's in nutrition communication at Ryerson at the time. So I
Okay.
did that while working at Unilever still. And so I did my master's, and then I reapplied again to get my internship, and I didn't get it. And so I think I was on my third or fourth sort of
Wow.
year of trying to get an internship. And I was so determined to be a registered dietitian. I was like, you know what, that's it. If I'm not going to get an internship spot, I'm going to make my own internship. And so I know that it was only ever done, I think, once ever in the at the College of Ontario of Dietitians, where they created a self-directed internship. And I remember I met with the other sort of dietitian at the time who did a self-directed internship, and she's like, "This is very difficult. It's only been ever done once before. Like it's going to take you much longer than a regular internship." But I was so determined to be a dietitian. I was like, you know what? I'm so passionate about nutrition. I'm so passionate about food. I have so much joy to spread with to the world about food and nutrition, that I'm going to create my own self-directed internship. And so I worked with the College of Dietitians of Ontario to do a self-directed internship. And mind you, this was all on my own. This is like they did not
Wow.
help me. This is like I had to do everything, and you had to write like a big sort of report. I think it was like over 1,000-page report that I had to do. It took me just over a year. But after a year of doing a self-directed internship, I did the exam and I became a registered dietitian. So that's kind of how my journey started, of sort of becoming a registered dietitian.
Wow. Yeah. Is there anything that you like would say stands out? I mean, you kind of touched on it with Unilever and that role there, but anything that stands out in terms of like what's contributed to your success in your entrepreneur business?
I think so if I look back at my journey, so I was I worked at Unilever. I had worked in also in different sort of private practice, having a clinical too as well.
Yeah.
But I always loved food, and so I went to culinary school because I always wanted to kind of bridge food and nutrition and culinary together because I think that they go hand in hand. And so if I look
Hmm.
back at my journey, I worked in restaurants, I worked in I had a catering company too as well. I had sort of all these different roles that kind of led me to where I was at Healthy Crunch, and so they all kind of helped me develop Healthy Crunch. Like I worked, doing operations in a food service place, which helped me in my own business today. And
Yeah.
working at Unilever, I learned about regulatory stuff, and then I worked in food service, so I learned about how to put foods together and how to combine foods. And my culinary arts training taught me how to really make food that tasted great. But then
Hmm.
my nutrition education also taught me about how to kind of make foods that are good for you, and what are the certain components of like how do we balance out like fiber and protein, and why do we want to have
Hmm.
that sugar. So I think everything kind of came together to lead me where I am today.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a common theme is that sometimes we don't at the time know why our path is the way it is and, why we end up in certain experiences, but we learn a little bit of skill from each of those experiences and it can really help kind of blend together into something, so big and exciting like what you've done with Healthy Crunch.
Definitely. And, I think for me is like, I know that when I was at University of Guelph and I was studying, doing my undergrad in nutrition, and, I think there was like 25 of us in our class, and, everyone wanted to be a clinical dietitian. And we thought like that was the only route for dietitians. And I knew like, I did not want to be a clinical dietitian. I
Mm,
want to do something different. I knew I wanted to be hands-on with food. I'm very passionate about sort of being hands-on and doing,
yeah.
creating something that people could enjoy. And I didn't know exactly at the time when I was like doing my undergrad, what would that look like, right? But I always tell like even dietetic interns that come to me and just people that come for advice, I always say like, be open to any opportunities, because if I wasn't open to that opportunity at Unilever as an intern and doing regulatory,
Hmm.
who knows where I would be today, right? But I think that when you try different stuff and you see if you like it, and like even working in restaurants, I worked in so many different restaurants, and saying like, okay, I got some training, I got to see what this was like, but do I want to do this full time? Maybe not. So I think that words of advice that I could give to other people is just be open to any possibility, because you don't know what something might lead you to another path or another journey.
Oh, for sure. What would you say the role of mentors or coaches or community has been in your journey?
Definitely. So I think the one key for me is definitely finding mentors along the way. And sometimes I remember when I first started Healthy Crunch, or even when I was on my prior journey, just as a dietetic intern, I was nervous to reach out to people. Sometimes you see people on LinkedIn, and you're like, oh, should I reach out to them? They sound inspiring. Even sometimes right now, people reach out to me and they were like, they're so nervous, but you'll be surprised how often people want to help too as well. I think that's the one thing that
Hmm.
I realized, like once you get over that fear of like making the first step and sending out that first LinkedIn request to reach out to someone, because a lot of times people want to give back to you. And I know for myself, I have a lot of mentors that have helped me along the way, giving such a good advice. And one of my mentors, Eileen, who's been with me since the start of my sort of entrepreneurial journey. I met her in 2014 when I first started Healthy Crunch, and she's been there throughout the journey with me. And she gives such great advice sometimes. Even one of the best pieces of advice she always says to me is, Julie, go slow to go fast, right? And
Mm,
so through my journey, I've always had these entrepreneurs where they come, or sort of mentors that come into my life and kind of give me words of wisdom to either get me to another phase of my business, or just come along my path to sort of help me out through certain times. But Eileen has been such a great mentor to me, and this phrase that she always says, go slow to go fast, is something
yeah.
key always recommend everyone sort of lives by. And the reason for that is that, sometimes when you're starting off any business or just anything in life, if you go too fast, sometimes you miss certain key factors, right? And I know in business, let's say when I first started my business, I want to like go, I'm like, go, 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 let's go 100 miles an hour. But then if you don't have the foundation right, certain things happen. Let's say you're buying lots of packaging, and you rush to like get the packaging approved, and then you miss something, and then there's like a artwork mistake, and then you kind of have to dispose that packaging. Well, that's a lot of money that you're throwing away,
Yeah.
right? It's go slow to go fast, and I truly believe in it, and I have it written on my wall too as well. And I look at it all the time and just make sure that you're really doing everything that you need to do in order to get to that next phase.
That's great advice. Yeah, I love that. It's easy to get caught up in the hustle, right, of entrepreneurship, I'm sure, and just like getting to the next stage and just taking those extra time to make sure you're like doing things thoroughly, I'm sure is really valuable.
100%. And also sustained growth. I think that also, when I first started Healthy Crunch, we grew really fast. So within the first year,
Yeah.
our first customer was Starbucks, then we got into Costco, Shoppers Drug Mart, Loblaws, like every major grocery store had us. Even IKEA was selling our kale chips. Like Cineplex had our kale
Wow.
chips. Like our kale chips, we were at the right place at the right time with the right product. And I think, you
Yeah.
have the 4 Ps they call it. And we grew really fast. But then, COVID hit, and then there was like supply chain issues with kale, and like we were getting truckloads of kale, and we couldn't get at that much kale, and so we had to discontinue our kale chips at the time. And it was very hard for me because I was like, oh my god, this
Mhm.
is like my baby product line, like
Yeah.
but then you have to evolve, right? And so some things happen in your entrepreneurial journey or just in life, and you kind of have to roll with it. And sometimes if I look back, I'm like, wow, I'm so happy that that actually happened, that we were able to move beyond kale, because now we have so many other delicious products that we were able to kind of develop. But who knows, if we didn't have those kale issues, who knew we would have just been still developing, making kale chips only.
Yeah. Wow, that's interesting. Did you feel that you ran into any like knowledge gaps when you were moving kind of into like entrepreneurship and business?
All right, so I love this question because this is like totally, I've talked about this to other sort of people that asked me about my entrepreneurial journey. And so yeah, so I went to school as a dietitian, right? We took undergrad nutrition,
Yeah.
we learned about all the different, how to consult, all the fundamentals. But then when it came to running my business, I remember I met with our accountant, and he's like, okay, well, we have to do a business plan. You have to have a P&L. You have to know your cogs. I'm like, cogs. I'm like, what's a cog? Like, no one like cost kids, right? Like I had no clue about all this stuff because, number one, I went to school for culinary training and for dietetics. I didn't go, I didn't do my
Hmm.
MBA. And so it was a huge gap. I remember the first couple of years, it was just, you just flying off the, kind of doing things, not knowing how to understand, what a business plan is and how to develop your profit and loss statements and all these financial stuff. I think the aspect that I really struggled with was more sort of on that finance side. But
Hmm.
then once I learned all the numbers and really got dig deep into kind of understanding like how a business should function, and like, your margins and like everything, it's like now I know numbers off the back of my hand, like, but there was that knowledge gap, right? Because
Yeah.
obviously, dietitians, we're not trained in finance, but it was something that I had to really spend extra time on, and learn about, because it's so important that you know the numbers for your business, because you could have a great product, a great, product design, everything, but if your business is not financially stable, it's not profitable, you don't know your numbers, you could be burning through money. It's
Yeah.
just not going to sustain long term.
I think that's amazing advice. And it's a common one I hear from a lot of health professionals, even if they're going to maybe work in a company, like not feeling confident with finance. And that was my own experience working in a large retailer. And I found the things that helped me the most were just like not being afraid to ask questions, and dumb questions aren't dumb questions. Like just ask the questions. And then I think really getting to deep dive into understanding like the business model and the financial model of wherever you're going to be working in. Like you kind of said that was really important for you. And I totally agree. You have to understand like the financial model and live and breathe it a little bit because it's just really important.
Exactly. And especially in the food business, we're buying like raw commodities, and you're forecasting, and like
Yeah.
you're a lot of money, right? And it's like, when I first started Healthy Crunch, it was all just passion. I was so passionate about food and nutrition and making people feel good with food. But then I came to the realization after a couple of years, I was like, wow, we're dealing with a lot of money here. And like I have to know the numbers, right? And so to your point, it's like asking, your accountant, asking for help, asking your mentors, asking,
Hmm.
courses online. I remember, when I first started Healthy Crunch, I went to the bookstore to like see if there was a book, because all nutrition students, we have hundreds and
Yeah.
hundreds of books that we go through, but there was no book on like how to start a food business. There was a book about how to start
Mm.
a restaurant. And so really, but I think that, as dietitians, one thing I could say is that, we're all into like researching, right? Like if there's a
Yeah.
topic we want to know in, we're like, okay, we're going to dig deep, we're going to research, we're going to ask questions. And that's one thing that I really did the first couple of years of my business, to really understand how is this business going to survive, right? And so I think that's kind of been one of our keys to success, is that, I really take everything that is important and really dig deep to understand the importance of it.
That's great. What do you love about your current role? Like, what do you love about being the CEO of your company?
Oh, I love, you know what, every single day for me, it doesn't feel like actually work. I always tell people it's more like a lifestyle. Being an entrepreneur, it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And the great thing about being an entrepreneur too, as well, and being a founder, it's you get to create something. Anytime I have an idea about a new product, it's like you get to take something from ideation. Let's say an idea, you have an idea about this food product, and you're like, oh, I feel like there's some white space in the store, or customers are coming to us, or retailers are coming to us, and you take this idea and you basically turn it into something, into reality, and seeing it in the final product and the packaging design and everything. It's so amazing when you get to see that, sort of that whole process, and then get to see consumers enjoy it, and that feeling when consumers eat your product and they're like, oh my god, this is like so delicious, thank you so much for creating this, like I couldn't find it. We also create a lot of products that are allergen free. So let's say if you have a dietary
Hmm.
restriction, let's say you can have like peanuts or tree nuts or dairy or gluten, and a lot of times we're creating products that, are not available in the market. Let's say it's like,
Yeah.
vegan chocolate chip that's allergen free and like lower in sugar, right? And so when consumers write to us or they call us and they're like, oh my god, thank you, I haven't been able to eat chocolate because I haven't found something that's like allergen free, and just to hear
Hmm.
how happy they are, is truly exciting for me as a founder. But also I really like it that every day is different. It's like one day I could sort of be having a meeting with Costco. Next minute I could, be doing a marketing, let's say an interview. Then I'm meeting with supply chain. Then you're meeting with like finance team. Like every day is so different, which I love the variety of it, just because it keeps it kind of fun and interesting and different.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, it sounds exciting. Are there any like programs or courses that you find helpful that you're kind of working on right now with personal development?
Oh, excellent. Well, this one, yeah, for me, I know one thing that I'm trying to work more on is sort of just aspects of marketing, right? Marketing
Yeah.
is so there's so many different social media platforms, TikTok, Instagram. It's like even with AI, like Chat GPT, like yeah, how is this all going to affect sort of the business landscape? How's this going to affect marketing too as well? So I know right now our team's kind of digging deep into kind of understanding the kind of the way technology is helping businesses. One
Hmm.
thing, it's great, but it's also kind of scary.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's I'm not taking any courses on that, but I know that's kind of something that we're digging deep into understanding, because this whole new world that we're coming into is like so fascinating. Which there's lots of opportunities to help sort of businesses grow, but it's also scary in the fact that like ChatGPT could basically like write anything. We didn't have this in school back then, like when I was
No.
doing grad, right? Like we had to actually like sit there and like write essays and like write all the content and all that. But yeah, that's kind of something that we're really trying to dig deep in understanding and learning more about.
Yeah, that's cool. I love to ask this question, but if there was one thing that you could share with your early career self, what would that be?
Oh, early career stuff. I think that I would just sort of like, oh, that's a good question. I think I would really just enjoy every aspect of anything that comes to sort of your way. I feel that when I was first starting off, like even though I had that great opportunity with Unilever and being a chef, like and working in lots of different restaurants, I still sometimes you're a little bit hesitant to kind of go into sort of a different sort of angle, because I was a dietitian. I kind of was going into that realm, but I think that one thing that I could to say to sort of any fellow dietitians out there is don't be scared to try something that might not be in dietetic field, like that it might sound like not dietetics kind of thing, because
Mm,
you never know how it might lead you to something else, right? Like right now, if I there's so many dietitians out there that I meet that I'm like, oh my god, wow, you're in like a completely different role that I did not even
yeah.
think that like dietitians could be in, right? And so I think that I would have said to myself, like, just be open to any opportunity out there, because a lot of times you don't need, it just doesn't need to be clinical dietitian. It can kind of be something completely different. Even like myself being a CEO of a company and a founder, right? It's like so different, but we're still practicing dietetics. I think that's the key.
Hmm.
Like, you still have an aspect to your job that is dietetics, because the world of dietetics is so open, right? It's such a
Yeah.
broad sort of term. And I think that's great that we're here sharing more about kind of what some dietitians do out there, because often, like I said before, it's just not all clinical dietetics, right? There's a lot more of this role that could that people could utilize.
Yeah, it's definitely shifting. And I think, that's what inspires a lot of what I do is like helping people see what's out there. Because you might not think of it, right? Like you might not think about your role in like a health tech company or a food company, that type of thing. So yeah, there's a ton of opportunity if you have an open mind. So I think that's really great advice. Is there anything else in terms of advice you have for listeners?
Oh, good question. Yeah, I think it's just be positive. I think, one of the things that really helped me along my entrepreneurial journey is like, highs and lows come. I know being a founder and entrepreneur, it's like, the highs get you through the low times, but it's just kind of persevering. I think being resilient, I think that's one thing that I always talk about with people is like, it doesn't matter how many times you fall down, or even like, if I look back at when I was trying to get a dietetic internship, like, I kept on every year I get no, no, no when I would submit my application. But I had that resilience, that determination that, this is what I want to do. This is my career path. And I made it happen. And so if I could sort of say that to other dietetic interns out there, or just anyone in life, like no matter how many, no's you get, or even, sometimes when I say, let's say like a retailer says, we don't want to list your product. Okay, the door might be closed, but it doesn't mean it's locked, right? And
Yeah.
so sometimes it just needs a little bit of nudging. It just gives a little bit of time, and
Hmm.
you'll be able to open that door. So just having perseverance, resilience, being determined, and just kind of keeping on your path, and whatever vision or whatever destiny you want to accomplish, anything is possible. If I look back at my entrepreneurial journey, getting to Starbucks and all these like amazing different retail stores, I had a vision. I had a dream of this is what I want to create. And so you just kind of stay true to your path and into your beliefs, and it's able to happen.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I'll wrap us up here. But yeah, I hope everyone enjoyed hearing from Julie and you're feeling inspired. I know I am. So I have two different ways I can help you as a health professional. If you're wanting to make a career transition into something new, we have the Beyond Clinical Career Transition Program, which is coaching and some courses on business fundamentals. But if you're a health professional already working outside of clinical, we also have a new network and community program. And you can find out more about both of these in the show notes below. So awesome. Thank you so much, Julie. And yeah, have a great rest of your day.
Well, thank you so much, and it's a pleasure to connect with anyone, with everyone listening. And if they want to get in touch with me, you could either reach out to me on Instagram, Healthy Crunch Founder, or on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to share kind of more, wisdom. Or if anyone wants a mentor too as well, please feel free to reach out, because I'm always happy to give advice too as well.
Amazing. I'll get your details and put them in the show notes as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.